Hello there, I'm Nadine Blaney. Welcome to Media Week. Ahead on the program, readership estimates will be the only game in town going forward for Australian magazines. Josanne Ryan, CEO of Audited Media, will join us a little bit later in the program. And Channel 7 continues to dominate the free-to-air TV ratings. But it's not all good news for 7 West Media, suffering a huge profit drop and plenty more besides. We'll get some analysis from a market perspective in the program as well with Ben Forrester from Macquarie Wealth Management. My co-host and editor and publisher of Media Week, James Manning, is here with me to take us through all of those stories and more. But first, earlier this month, Brand Finance released data that ranked the top 100 most valuable brands in Australia. 9 of the top 10 spots on the chart were filled by telcos, banks, and supermarkets. To find out why perhaps these companies rank so highly while others do not is Brand Finance CEO Mark Crowe. Mark, welcome to the program. Great to have you here with us. So I guess just give us the lay of the land. How are these rankings compiled? Based on what metrics?
So we're looking at these companies from the point of view of their brand value. By brand value, we mean the value of the brand in terms of being a transferable asset. But in addition to that, when we talk about brands and the value they provide for companies, we're also looking at the value they contribute in terms of shareholder value, whether that be in terms of increased or decreased value.
Do you include things like consumer sentiment about a brand at all?
Essentially, when we're looking at brand value, we look at 3 things. We look at the quality of the investment in the brand. We then look at brand equity, which covers a range of attributes, consumer sentiment around familiarity, awareness, preference, etc. And then finally, we look at financial performance. So in a sense, we're looking at brand value from the point of view of tabulating both financial and marketing metrics.
So what companies specifically rank highest in Australia?
Well, this year, for the second year in a row, Telstra achieved the #1 ranking. And they achieved that for the first time last year, overtaking Woolworths, who dropped from #1 to second. And this year, Woolworths have fallen down to 5, which is evident of the challenges in both the retail sector and as well Woolworths in terms of their falling profits and decreased consumer sentiment.
And what is it? I mean, it's interesting today, Telstra reporting a surprise miss when it comes to profits. They're seeing some pressures through competition when it comes to mobile markets, etc. I mean, what is it about Telstra necessarily that keeps it at #1? What is the real resonance of it?
Well, it's an interesting brand, Telstra, because last year they saw an 18% drop in economic value, yet their brand value only decreased by 2%. And what that is pushing is very much the strength in the Telstra brand, which can overcome some of those market challenges that Telstra went through in the last 12 months.
How about when it comes to sort of PR? Because, of course, we've had those very widely publicised mobile outages when it comes to Telstra. I'm just surprised that that didn't sort of resonate when it comes to their ranking.
Well, I think there's 2 things there. Certainly a strong brand is able to communicate effectively with its stakeholders, not only just customers, but suppliers, media, government. And then secondly, as I said, with a lot of the top 10 brands this year, you have seen some decline in brand strength. And that is feeding through because of some of the negative consumer sentiment. And if that continues, you will see eventually some erosion in brand value.
Mark, tell us, I mean, we see you come out, I think, the top 100 here in Australia. We saw the top 10. I think you do 500 in the US. How do brands use the information? I mean, do you have a deeper dive for them if they want some data on that?
We do. We offer a range of insights around what's happened to the brand in terms of its value, but looking at where particularly brand value is driving performance and where perhaps the brand itself has had some negative impact on overall business value. And in that respect, one of the important things about looking at brand value is, as I said before, we're looking at both a mix of marketing and financial information. So we're really bringing together marketing effectiveness and putting a financial lens around it.
I think it's interesting when you take a global picture. We had 6 tech companies listed in the top 10 in the US. Not so here, I guess, if you take Telstra and consider that a telco. So it also really speaks to, I suppose, the makeup of our market and the innovation and the prospects here as well.
It does very much. I mean, the Australian market by size makes it very difficult in terms of the ability to invest in new startups, which are very much these days driven by technology. But on the other hand too, when you look at our top 10 brands, they're forever looking at where their next growth potential is, and whether it be overseas or, importantly, investing in Australia and perhaps looking at extending their brands into tech areas. So I think that's a space to watch, because when you look at the banks, they've got tremendous capability in terms of being able to process a high number of transactions, and when you have that capability, that can transfer into some other sectors. So the potential for the banks, the telcos and even the retailers to extend their brand and invest in technology is very much an opportunity.
Do you think just investors can use this stuff too? I mean, is it worth
very
watching
much so?
where
I mean,
brands go, and can that give you some insights into how they might perform on the?
Well, investors are constantly looking at what's ahead, where are the signposts ahead. A lot of the reporting information is background, is historical. When you're looking at brand value, you're looking at forecasts, you're looking at signposts around what's happening in the future. So we did a survey of investment analysts, and 75% certainly said we want to know more about brand value in annual reporting.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, and just maybe quickly, any sectors that are making a move on your chart here or maybe globally, that.
Oh, well, look, I think not so much the sector, but the Chinese brands have really come to the fore.
Interesting.
And that's because
like Alibaba,
Alibaba, WeChat, ISBC, the Chinese bank, is now the #1 bank in the world. And that's very much because of not have they invested in product and scale, they are now very much investing in brand.
Interesting, this being Media Week. Media companies probably have some of the best known brands in Australia, but they don't really rank on the list.
No, and people do ask that question. One, it's because we're looking at the corporate brand, so from a listed point of view, so you don't often very much measure the actual brands in terms of consumer facing.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark Crowe is CEO of Brand Finance. Now, I guess that's a little bit of a segue into our next conversation with my co-host, James Manning from Media Week, because, look, this week in Media Land, you can't get past 7 West Media. Not only its result, which we will delve into in just a moment, but obviously the controversy surrounding its current CEO, Tim Warner. Were you listening into that conference call yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely, and I was lucky I got to pose a question to the chairman as well, so that was great to be able to get access to him. I think there was some speculation, would Tim Warner be stepping down? Might they choose to announce that this week? And you came away from that conference call going, he's not going anywhere at the moment, that's for sure.
He certainly did take the opportunity to apologise. Let's listen in.
I have apologised for what did happen, and we don't wish to give any more oxygen to things that did not happen. The company has made a number of public statements on the matter and will continue to keep the market informed. Our team has been and continues to be totally focused on driving home our leadership. We have not been distracted.
So we did hear from Mr. Warner apologising, James, but still the board, the chair, Mr. Stokes, really standing by his CEO. In fact, let's listen into what Mr. Stokes had to say.
Very proud of where we've taken Seven in the last couple of years under his direction and the strategies that we've employed. At the end of the day, it has been stressful for he and his family. Of course it has. And we recognise that, and we actually appreciate a great deal the diligence he's put in the circumstances and how he's driven our company to where it is at the moment.
Yeah, look, he's, clearly saying, and the question I asked about, did Tim Warner want to stand down at any stage? Do you think that was the proper thing to do? And Stokes said, yeah, look, he was prepared to do what the board thought at the time. Our advice to him, Wade, and this is 3 years ago we're talking when it first broke, was that he should stay, and that's been their opinion all the way along.
And he got a little bit testy at one point when he was asked in particular...
Wasn't me.
No, I was going to ask if that was you. About one of his board members, though, standing down.
Yeah,
let's listen.
Absolutely.
Are you seriously suggesting I or my board would tell a director what they can and can't do? How dare you? Facts are, Sheila McGregor is a very forthright person who will make the comments she deems appropriate when she thinks they're appropriate.
Clearly, with the amount of media attention this is garnering and all of the, ripple effect really when it comes to conversation about corporate culture, the issue was not going to go away yesterday, especially, James, when we saw profits plummeting, even though Seven happens to be, leading the ratings in many regards. So again, when it comes down fundamentally to the product that Seven is pushing out, what was the general consensus of commentary at that?
Yeah, well, the
conference?
the TV revenues weren't that bad, actually. I think they were up very slightly, period on period. Year on year for that period. The things that were hurting were magazines again. That had a bit of a shocker. The newspapers was a bit subdued, not much excitement there. And the JV with Yahoo's Seven, it was hard to get questions in about that stuff because there were so many questions about the what was happening with Tim Warner, the board, Amber Harrison, all that stuff. So we didn't, there was no sort of news there about the speculation that maybe they'll be selling the magazines to Bauer. Going from what they were saying about the magazines, you'd have to think that's not on, because they were sort of, talking about the repositioning work they're doing there. Again, at the JV with Yahoo's up for Yahoo's just been sold in the States, so do they want to stay in that relationship or do they want to go out digitally on their own? And that's a decision I think they're going to have to make in this first half as well.
All right. Well, let's get a market's perspective on that one. And for that, Ben Forster is joining us from Macquarie Wealth Management. Ben, welcome to the program. We did see Seven West Media shares falling yesterday. How much of it is the result? How much of it is the just terrible PR that's ongoing around its CEO?
Look, I think all of it was really to do with what's going on with the results more so than what's happening in the leadership and the wider story, clearly, with what's going on there. I think the market was really disappointed to see, again, further deterioration in that advertising market. And really, despite the fact that there was a little bit more upbeat commentary for the second half, they are expecting a little bit of a better second half. There's a lot of work to be done, and really all of those free-to-air television stations, 9, 10 and 7, really are all under pressure because of that declining revenue spend. 7 is doing a lot of work in terms of trying to manage their cost growth outlook, and I think that is a net positive for the company, but clearly those revenue trends are going to continue to dog the whole sector, arguably, for at least the next 6 to 12 months, you would think.
And you mentioned 10 Network in there. Out with its result today, Ben, what do you make of it?
Well, again, it was very similar sentiment to what we saw with Seven yesterday. It was all about those ongoing declines in the TV revenue spend. Again, both management teams are trying to prop up hope for the second half, but in fairness, most in the market have really got this in the too hard basket. They're all languishing sub $1. Most in the market have got a neutral recommendation on them at best. Interestingly enough, there is an ongoing push towards the print plays more so than the television plays at this stage. Ongoing concern about potential regulatory risk is always going to be an overhang as well with respect to all of those potential media ownership changes. So again, I think in this environment where we're seeing such a push towards the cyclical growth plays, a lot of these businesses are really being left to languish, and there was really nothing from either of the reports today that suggests there's even a glimmer of value that's really starting to emerge from any of those names.
Ben, is there a concern among investors that the costs, both factored in the 10 and the 7 figures, that the costs they need for the content to keep their eyeballs at current levels are just sort of unmanageable in terms of getting the revenue to cover it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point. I mean, ultimately, the reason that they've had so much discussions around the cost is because of exactly that point. When you've got weaker top-line revenue from the advertising numbers, obviously, and then you've got obviously expensive things like the Olympics for Channel 7, the AFL, there's a big question mark, really, on where that revenue is going to come from and how they can possibly fill that gap. Clearly, as well, given that they're not a subscription model, they can't rely on the general user. So there's a big push, obviously, for content, and clearly I think it's inordinately difficult to manage at the moment. And whilst they're managing as best they can, again, from an investment thesis perspective, really difficult to find any real justification to buy these names.
Ben Forster, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Coming up on Media Week, Australian magazines capping their circulation figures to readership estimates only. Is this a good move? We're joined by Josanne Ryan. She's CEO of the Audited Media Association. Next.
It's the growl that shakes the gravel off the road. It sends weaker creatures running. Some might ask, why did we build an SUV? That's the thing. We didn't. We built a Maserati.
So I knew I was half Austrian and then assumed I had at least some Māori blood in me. I did the Ancestry DNA test and I was blown away. 51% Scandinavian, 7% Greek and Italian, a bit of Jewish and then British from my mum's side. Who knew this girl from Hamilton could be so ethnically diverse? I just can't wait to dig deeper.
Discover the story only your DNA can tell. Order your Ancestry DNA kit today.
Tous les jours, le métro passe au-dessus du café. Pauline regarde trembler les verres.
C'est comme s'il dansait.
Moi aussi, j'aime les petites choses que personne d'autre ne remarque. Écoutez. C'est le chant d'une petite baleine.
Babble.
You're a successful professional. In life, you always strive for the best. So when looking for a serious relationship, why settle for anything less?
Get to know someone worth getting to know. Register today at elitesingles.com.au.
Did you know the right agent could make you hundreds of thousands of dollars more on the sale of your home? Secure the right agent to get you top dollar at openagent.com.au. And the best part is it's absolutely free. Simply type in your postcode to discover agents who have sold homes in your area. Next, get a snapshot of recently sold properties and compare agent reviews.
It was quick, it was easy, and they did all the hard work.
To personalise your search, speak to a specialist from our research team. No wonder 60,000 Australians visit Open Agent each month to find them an agent that can sell their home smarter, faster, and for more money.
We sold our house for $150,000 more, and that made such a difference.
Find the right agent to get top dollar for your home. Remove the guesswork and let Open Agent do the hard work for you. Call or visit openagent.com.au.
Housing affordability could be the centrepiece of the government's budget. Michael Sukkar joins me to talk about the options available, plus Labor's Ed Husick and a debate about the future of the health system. On the next Carvelis, Sky News Live.
Welcome back to the program. Well, our co-host, James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek, is here, of course. For the next segment, we're going to talk magazines. This week, magazines that continue to audit their circulations will see that data released. Now, the majority of the titles in the magazine sector and all of the biggest selling titles have decided to supply advertisers with readership estimates only instead. To assess the impact this could have on the sector, the CEO of the Audited Media Association, which oversees circulation audits, Josanne Ryan, joins us now in studio. Okay, could you just, lay the scene, lay the groundwork for us when it comes to what exactly we're waiting for here?
Yeah, well, the ABC audit is the audit for the consumer paid titles, which will come out tomorrow. Within that audit, there's about 250 titles that are audited, but only 18 of those now will be magazines because the largest publishers have exited that audit. So about 60 titles, 60 magazines have exited, based on the fact that they're going to be producing audience data, readership data only for agencies.
Okay, Natalis, and this is where there's a bit of a debate, isn't there? Publishers say, look, media agencies buy on the number of readers, which is the readership survey, but it's only an estimate, correct?
Yes.
But you were providing a backup data which tells exactly how many copies are sold.
Yeah.
So a magazine might sell 100,000 and have, let's say, 500,000 readers.
Yeah.
And then the magazine investment people would weigh that up and invest their money. Now they're only going to get an estimate. Will that matter not having that audited figure, do you think?
Well, the agencies use both those data points. So they use circulation for negotiation and also for campaign evaluation, and especially retailers. So they've always had both those sets of data. So it really shouldn't be an either-or. They work together. So the audited circulation is a verified sales figure. So, someone like, a brand like Women's Weekly that sells 380,000 a month, that audited figure would be used by the agencies to monitor how many sales they're having, maybe negotiate on rate, assess campaigns. So it is a lessening of accountability and transparency for the magazines in terms of what the agencies and clients have access to.
Now, you have agency members on your board. Do you think there could be financial ramifications for the publishers? Could it be a little bit harder to get people to buy ads at the prices they were paying?
Look, in talking to agencies and clients, they're disappointed by the move, and they say they do use the circulation data and it's important. And some of them have indicated they may reassess. I can't say whether there'll be what changes there will be, but it's not supportive for the channel. And I mean, if circulation was going up, I don't think we'd be seeing this happening. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. I mean, magazines are under pressure globally, that we've talked about before on the show quite a bit.
Yes.
Is this movement happening internationally, or is this another Aussie first?
Well, this is the first, we're the first country where this has happened. And in talking to the UK and the US, our counterparts there, they say that their buy side, meaning agencies and clients, would not allow this, that there's a lot of pressure in their market for audited data. And in fact, it's really against a worldwide trend. What we're seeing is Mark Pritchard from P&G coming out and pushing the industry for more verification across digital and more transparency.
Oh, Facebook drama and all that stuff.
And so this is actually a step against a level of transparency that has been entrenched in that industry for a very long time. So from that point of view, it is a disappointing trend, I think.
Do you think that digital and the prevalence of digital and the penetration has sort of precipitated this move?
Absolutely. I mean, it's put a lot of pressure on the print publishers. A lot of that revenue that goes into digital, print has been hurt substantially by that. So there's no doubt that those publishers are in transition and that they've had some difficult years and that they continue to have difficulty. But the thing is, moving this pillar of transparency away doesn't necessarily help them, I don't think.
Sure. What about, they talk about their total audiences is now print and digital. That's the magazine publishers.
Yeah.
They want to be able to, encapsulate that total audience when they quote figures. How easy is it, do you think, for advertisers to buy that total audience? Because publishers are really almost late to the game in some ways in making over their digital businesses.
Well, I think publishers do a lot of integrated campaigns, and that's fair to say that audience is an important metric. So, I don't think that it should be an either-or, as I mentioned. I think audience has its role, and those brands are playing out across social, across digital, even events. So it's in the publisher's interest to be able to, isolate what the total audience is. So that's positive. I think, though, that for the readership metric, which is part of their audience, the circ data indicates the primary reader. So, you don't have a pass-on reader unless you have a primary reader.
And would media agencies allow newspapers to stop auditing their sales, do you think? I mean, but they're higher numbers, so maybe there's not the pressure on them that the magazine publishers are facing.
Yeah, there's still, considerable revenue that goes into newspapers out of agencies. I think SMI estimates at about 570 million last year. Agencies have said to me they would think this was, a bad step for newspapers. Because, the auditors built trust in all these brands. And, that audited figure is a hard data point as opposed to readership, which is an estimate, as you've already mentioned, James. I think the other thing that an agency pointed out to me is that print, in comparison to digital, can be an expensive channel. So being more accountable is in their favour as opposed to being less accountable in that sense. But, I think that the publishers will continue to actually improve all of their, audience metrics. I think that is in their interest to continue to do that. It's just disappointing they've moved away from circulation.
Yeah, interesting. Changing landscape of media in Australia, case in point. Thank you so much for joining us, Joseanne. Really appreciate it. Joseanne is the CEO of the Audited Media Association, and she we'll look forward to speaking with her in the future again. We do have to turn to TV. Let's get into some of the ratings. This is for week 6 for free to air, and we had a discussion about Channel 7 prior, and it looks as if My Kitchen Rules certainly has a firm hold on that top 5.
Sure, yeah, 7, a lot of their presentation, they were pushing how dominant they still are in this free-to-air space.
And News, of course, doing well for 7 as well.
Sure, yeah.
Turning the page and taking a look at subscription television ratings, and again, this is for week 6, and we've got a sport clearly dominating, and it's nice to see again AFL Women's in there as well.
Yeah, actually, and ESPN a couple of spots in that top 5 with the Super Bowl. We'll be talking more about subscription TV sports next week.
Okay.
We'll find out a little bit about their new Fox League channel that's starting up.
Look forward to it. Next week, I assume we'll see Gogglebox start to show up on the STV ratings.
Yeah,
because it looks like sport
kicked off this week, yeah.
For now, yeah, I watched it last night. It's my date night on Wednesdays, exciting as my life is. Let's take a look at non-sport, I believe we've got coming up as well. Actually, we'll just leave that there. So what else is happening in TV land this week? We've got some pretty good visuals for The Bold and Beautiful at the Opera House.
Yeah, the amazing success soap opera in the US, which does fantastic business. It's on Network 10 here. It's their lead into their news on weekday afternoons, and it helps give them some big audiences and really fires up their news, which sometimes is close to their biggest program of the night. So The Bold and Beautiful, I think they're going to knock off 3 episodes just in their week here, so they don't waste much time. They've been on the Opera House, as we can see here. I think they've been out to Manly as well, shooting some stuff.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, they're having a great time. Yeah.
Getting the best of Sydney, and I think they came over on Qantas planes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, and it's a good little tourism play for Australia as well, I think.
All right, James, look, we'll have to cut it off there. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for this
Nadine.
week. James Manning there, editor and publisher of Media Week. We have to take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you through more of the market moves. Back in a moment.